Hello, this is Vision Denial. My name is Sam. This is the Road to MSI 2022, where I go through all the playoff series of every region, yes, including that one. And I've already gone through all of them. So what's this? Well, this is the Meet the Teams, and today we go straight to the LLA for Latin America's Team Aze, a team that has a little bit of everything going on. Some spunk, some good lanes, some team fight coordination, but overall is just here to really show what they've got. But can they bring it? Well, let's take a look. So first, start by meeting the coaching team, or at least the part of the face of the coaching team, Yeti, who's been part of the LLA since 2014, or at least the Latin American region, as a coach and analyst for quite some time. Having joined Team Aze for the 2022 season, he's brought a very neutral-focused team and a very neutral-focused energy towards Team Aze. And you can see this by the bans that they have towards a lot of zoning and, honestly, a whole lot of Lee Sin being banned against them. And that's thanks to their jungler, who is the huge star of the show. But you notice on the rest of the bans a lot of zone control, a lot of re-engage, things that are primarily used for neutral control, and things that they ban usually are anything that tend to enable siege, stuff that they've been showing a little bit of weakness with. And just a bit of jumping the gun over here, let's show some of that stats. So as mentioned, this team is fairly aggressive, but not a whole heck of a lot. First Bloods are not their focus. They have a fairly average game time compared to the rest of the league, and their gold differential reflects a lot about the way that they tend to use the gold when they receive it, but never usually towards turrets. Notice the big fat 0 at tower differential at 15 minutes. That means a whole lot of different, so it means that they trade towers a lot. Not that they just get a lot of the first towers, but they trade it quite frequently. So they do get first turret quite a bit of times, but they usually do so trading evenly at any given point. They have a larger focus towards dragons, having 3 dragons per game on average, and having the first Drake on most times. And this particular reflection on having neutral focus more than lane focus can sometimes make it hard for them to play on tempo. What does that mean specifically? It means that the enemy team can usually trade in ways that are very hard for them to navigate. This can become straight up a huge issue, as having dragon scaling win conditions can only go so far if you're unable to keep up with the high tempo that a lot of the other teams are going to be bringing. So, what does this look like with the other individual players? Say hello to Lonely. Many Korean fans and Southeast Asian fans will recognize this player, having jumped back and forth between the Academy, Challenger, and main scene of the region, only to have then moved, and not negatively speaking, but having moved then to the Latin American scene, joining Aze for the 2022 season. And he has been quite a powerhouse, having maybe not the hugest influence during the laning phase. He really brings his presence outside of the laning phase. He puts in a lot of side lane pressure, being a very hard and hitting split pusher. His expertise on this does bring times where his team fighting has huge moments, and I mean huge. His claw from Mordekaiser to a huge team fight with Renata, spectacular. But he is very seldom and lonely, as his name would present, in terms of the laning phase, and he does not bring a lot of pressure from it. For a player that tends to bring a lot of like side lane pressure as much as he can, he doesn't do so until much after the laning phase. And that's alright, because he does bring that pressure when needed and joins the teams when it brings a lot more success. But not at an incredible consistency, holding one of the lowest KDAs and the lowest CS per minute, one of the lower KDAs and one of the lower CS per minutes of some of his contemporaries coming into the international scene. There is some concern over his isolated playstyle. Meet the star of the show in Team Aze. Dimitry, having been part of the Latin American scene since 2019, fairly young compared to a lot of things, moved from Extension Esports to Team Aze in 2022 and has been doing incredibly well, being a huge proponent of the first bloods that are being made for his team. He is also consistently not just ganking, but also keeping up with his XP and farm, being anywhere between 1 to 2 farms ahead at any given point. Or 1 to 2 camps at any given point. And he may not have the most flexible roster in terms of things, but looking at his particular champion pool list, you can start to see why he brings in a lot of focus towards the bans. His tenure as being an aggressive, push it, and carry jungler has done a lot of work, especially given around the neutral objective focused team. So he translates that towards huge amounts of control around the Drakes and Heralds, and then proceeding that to move it over to his laners, at least specifically to Alone. Now, Alone over here has also been part of the Latin American scene since 2017 for himself, having gone from Rainbow 7 in 2020 all the way now to Team Aze in 2022. He has done not great in terms as laning potential, but when the push comes to shove, Dimitry is much of a control in the early game, but Alone is a team fighting presence in the mid to late game. His laning phase weaknesses don't tend to translate in the rest of the game, mostly because he tends to play around a lot of zone control based champions, not frequently trying to push himself too far forward or in positions that he doesn't need to be in. Noticing you see his undefeated Ari having created a lot of space and picks when push comes to shove, more or less to speak. He is, however, a player that, because he is fairly weak during the laning phase, has put himself in a bit of a pickle regarding tempo of the early game, right? A lot of his team, and because both him and Lonely are not strong laners in their capacity, their early game tends to be one of the weaker ones outside of anything neutral control related, hence why there's a lot of trades that happen for it. And this could become a huge issue going into the international scene, especially against the teams that they've been drawn for, who have incredibly strong laners and incredible proficiency in pushing those leads gained from the laning phase. Up next, we have 5kid, who many people may not be familiar with, as he has been part of the substitute or challenger league for the KT Rollsters for some time, but finally getting his big break to be part of a main league in Latin America, joining Team Aze for the 2022 season. And not the most flexible of marksmen going into the league, he is also, however, one of the more consistent ones, having straight up always staying about even or slightly ahead in his laning phase, and also bringing in any particular lead that he has into what is any setup for neutral objectives or team fights and thereon. He also has a fairly solid KDA, and a lot of this is not tracked as super well, but he is very solid at understanding where he needs to be for his positioning during these fights. You'll notice that he has a very low playstyle of sieging champions and a very high proficiency in terms of the team fight oriented ones, and that's where he excels primarily. Much of Team Ace is not a laning phase team, but a team fighting one, right? And so Five Kid exemplifies this as, though being one of the stronger laners amongst the rest of his team, it's still not by a huge margin, as it is more of a consistency to make sure that not everyone falls under behind, and he carries a lot of that weight with him. Between him and Dimitry, though, they do create a lot of space and are navigating well the team fights from whatever is started up or engaged on by either Lonely, Alone, or Straight. And speaking of, let's take a look at introducing Straight, who's been part of the Latin American scene since 2017, jumping in between teams on a fairly frequent basis, either being in the substitute line or playing as a top laner for the vast majority of his career. You would have recognized him if you were a Latin American fan as being the previous top laner for Rainbow Seven or for All Knights the year prior. Well, joining in as Ace's support player, he has not the greatest flexibility in terms of his champion pool, but he is very adept at understanding how to create space. And he is incredibly solid at doing so. Boasting a large amount of kill participation, he actively creates these fights, either in conjunction with either Lonely or Alone. Straight is quite honestly very, very savvy in understanding what his ranges are and what his limits are as a player. He does have a tendency to be on the lower end of the vision play more than anything else. But as mentioned, Team Ace is a team fighting team first and foremost, hence the large amount of focus on Leona, Nautilus, Braum, and Alistar, and only having used Renata a lot during the playoffs. Renata actually is in fact one of the champions that helped them win the whole thing to carry them here. So, I'm looking forward a lot to seeing how Straight, having freshly come into the role as a support player from being a top laner previously, deals with the other support players in the international scene, from a lot of them who have been veterans of that position for years. So that's Team Ace, the Latin American team with a lot of huge amount of pressure on them to be able to succeed on this particular front, given the teams that they've been drawn in the Group A. They have a lot to work with, given the very even to weak laners, to not focusing on the sieging as much as their neutral objective, and being much more of a team fighting team in a tournament with a lot of solid, if not incredibly proficient team fighters. But a lot of the coordination that they show, and with either Dimitry or Straight creating a lot of space and opportunity for other laners to really show what they've got, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some upset that comes from Team Ace, but I wouldn't put too much hope or expectations on them otherwise. Not a team that many people expect to win, but I would definitely look out on their abilities to set up neutral objectives, as that's what they excelled in. Well, with that, I'd love to hear what you guys have to think down below. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this type of videos, and I'll be doing a lot more of these Meet the Teams as we go forward. And with that, I'll see you next time.